Okay, so recently I received a lot of positive feedback about a really interesting looking map that I recently posted, and some people asked how I made that map. So I'm going to give you a little rundown on a similar map here, because there's a lot of different products that were involved in the making of this palette map. So I've started with some rough pine that I have resawn. So this is like about half an inch thick. This map's going to end up being 2 by 4 feet. The planks, each plank is 3 inches, and we're going to color those boards with some various coloring. So the first product that I'm going to use is a peacock blue aniline dye. So essentially that's like a stain, and it's going to give us a really interesting look on those boards. So I'm going to do 2 boards in each sort of finish combination. The next 2 boards I'm going to spray paint with some Rust-Oleum metallic bronze or copper spray paint, and I'm going to then use a Crackle Medium, Country Chic's Crackle Medium, and Country Chic's paint called Spirited. You'll notice that a lot of these products are Country Chic. I could also use Country Chic's metallic cream, but the spray paint's just a little cheaper and a little quicker for this particular project. There are other projects that I would definitely go with the metallic cream, but for this one the spray is going to work. Our next set of boards is going to be done with 2 colors of Country Chic paint and Country Chic's texture powder, which is a really sort of fun product that's going to give us a neat look to those 2 boards. The last 2 boards are going to be done in Country Chic color Peacoat, and I'm going to use some Vaseline as a resist to make those boards kind of a chippy, give those boards a chippy look. So I'm going to show you each product as I go through them and how that works and what each of those products do. So keep watching, and we're going to work through all of these boards. Some of them are going to take, going to be a 2-day, are going to require some drying time in between. First 2 boards are going to be done in the aniline dye. Aniline dyes come as a powder. They mix with water, and they just brush on like a stain all over. They soak in really nicely to the wood. And then to finish this off at the very end, I'm going to coat the entire piece in a clear coat. Just seal that in, because the aniline dye does have a tendency to run once it gets wet again, if it has not been sealed. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish off those 2 boards. Okay, so here's my 2 boards done in the nice blue aniline dye. So as you can see, that's pretty cool. And I've also gone ahead and spray painted these 2 boards in the copper, but we're just going to leave them to dry for right now. Excuse all my painty table. The next thing I'm going to work on is we're going to work with this texture powder here. So I've got a little bit of Bliss paint. As you can see, this one's been well loved. It's just a little bit of the jar left there. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add some of this texture powder to that paint. Oops. I'm going to take just a plastic fork and stir it in there. And the paint's already pretty thick because it's the end of the jar. But we're just really thickening up that paint. The texture powder is not going to change the color of the paint at all. It's just changing the texture. So we're looking for a really nice thick, like a pancake batter kind of a consistency there. Okay, so I've got my paint all mixed up here, and now I'm going to take an older sort of a cheap brush. Actually, before that, I've got one thing I'd like to do. I think I'm going to add a little bit of Vaseline to here to create a little bit of a resist in some spots. So my paint's going to actually then just chip off. So I'm just going to take it. You can use lots of different products to create a resist. Anything that's kind of oily, so it could be wax. You can use a candle. You could use a bar of beeswax. You could use some hemp oil. Now on unfinished wood like this, sometimes hemp oil tends to just sink into the wood and doesn't create much of a resist. I am kind of partial to Vaseline because it's pretty inexpensive and easy to get, and I just use a paintbrush to smear it on in little places there. Alright, then I'll take my paintbrush. I'm actually just going to dab so I create lots and lots of texture. So I'm going to create that texture all over my board. Alright, so I will go ahead and do that. Last set of boards, I'm going to again be using my Vaseline to create a resist, to give me a chippy look. I'm going to be painting that on, and because I'm using navy and my wood's light, I have enough of a color contrast there that that I can just go with bare wood. Depending on my color, I might have chosen to stain first, but in this case I'm just going to go with having it chipped down to the natural pine that's there. So I'm just going to apply my Vaseline. I'm going to apply a nice coat of that pea coat colored, which is a navy colored paint, and then that will be it for now, because I'll have to let everything dry. Oh, I did mean to show you the texture. So there you can see all the texture that's in that paint. What's going to happen is after that's dry, I'm going to coat it with another color. Then I'm going to sand it back, and so where the texture is raised, the top coat color will sand off when I kind of smooth it out. The texture powder also helps a lot with creating a authentic sort of a chippy look, in that the paint tends to chip a little easier after that texture powder's been used, and that also makes for an interesting and different look. Okay, so I think I've got enough of a resist applied here that I'm going to get a look that I kind of like. So I'm going to just stop for a second and go get a brush for my pea coat and paint those up. So there we go. There's my pea coat all applied to that set of boards. And if you look closely right here, you can see where the resist is just the paint's not sticking. After that paint's dry, I'll take a scraper and I'll just scrape off those sections to create that kind of chippy look on those pieces. So I will be back to show you all the next steps to this project after all this paint's dry. So I'm back. My paint, my metallic paint and my paint with the texture mediums all dry now. So I'm going to go ahead and do my next step. So for these copper boards, I'm going to apply some crackle medium, and then I'm going to apply the color Spirited over top of that crackle medium. So it's gonna, my Spirited is gonna crackle back to this nice copper metallic. For my texture medium boards, I am going to apply a color called Aura. Yesterday it said Vanilla Frosting, but I looked back at the map that the people took as inspiration for this order, and it was Aurora that I used. So that's an old limited edition color. Anyways, so that's the color I'm going to use. It's going to give a really like moody sort of a feel to this map. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply my crackle medium here. And then I'm going to show you how I apply the paint over top of that. So the crackle medium, just paint it on with a brush. Allow it to sit for a few minutes. So what we'll probably do is put the crackle medium on here, come over here and apply my paint to these boards, and then come back and paint these guys. Okay, so I've applied my crackle medium, so you can see it, it's all shiny there. It's not quite covering the whole board. When I do like pieces where I'm trying to get an antique look, I usually apply the crackle medium just in sections, because if you find crackled antiques, they usually aren't crackled all over. They're just usually crackled in certain areas. So I tend to do that with this. Now for this piece, because it's kind of more of an artistic-y looking piece, I'm not necessarily looking for a true antique look. I'm just looking for interesting textures and feels. So it doesn't really matter, but we do want to let that start to dry a little bit before we apply our paint over top. The thicker you apply the crackle medium, the bigger your crackles are going to be. So if you want like great big chunky crackles, you're going to apply a nice thick layer of crackle. If you want smaller, finer, detailed crackles, you're going to apply less. So I've applied quite a bit there because I do want that to really show up. And this is kind of a large piece. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply my Aurora over top of the textured Bliss here. And I'm just going to paint that on. I'm not needing to be too careful because what we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up sanding this back, and we're going to just get a mixture of these two colors plus a little bit of the natural wood underneath. So I'm not, this is not a piece of giant piece of furniture or something where I'm wanting it to look like it came from a factory. It's okay that it's a little bit textured, a little bit messy, because that's kind of the look we're going for here. So I'm going to go ahead and just finish that up. Okay, so there's my Aurora all painted over top there. And I did mention last night when I was doing this that I had put some Vaseline on these Peacoat boards so I'd be able to chip some of the paint off. So now I'm just going to take a little scraper, and you can see where I put the Vaseline. That paint just scrapes right away there, and then that leaves me with that kind of chippy look to this board. So again, just kind of scraping along, and it takes the paint right off. There we go, in little sections, and that makes for kind of a fun look too for those boards. So that's going to be the look for them. We're going to go back over here to our crackle medium. When you're painting over crackle medium, you want to be very careful not to overwork your paint. So you're just going to do one nice thick coat over top. We're not going back and painting over and over that section. Otherwise, what's going to end up happening is the crackle medium is just going to mix in with the paint, and we're not going to actually get any crackles. So Country Chic is great for this because it is such thick, heavy coverage all in one go that you can get a really nice look. Okay, so there we go. All the boards are now need to dry again. So we're going to come back and see how these ones have cracked. These ones, once the top coat's dry, I'm going to come back and sand over so we get that two-tone look on those ones. And the peacock blue and line dye down here, and these Peacoat chippy boards are going to stay just the way they are. So they're going to, we're just going to top coat those once they're all done. They'll get top coated in a clear coat after I've joined all the boards together. So I'll be back to show you the cracking. Oh, we can already see some happening right there. You can see where it's starting to crack. Yeah, so I'll be back. I'll show you that. I'll show you the sanding of these boards, and then we'll join the whole thing up and clear coat it and stencil a map on. Okay, so my top coats of paint are now dry. You can see some beautiful crackling there on this piece, as well as I've gone ahead and sanded one of my pieces with the texture powder there. So I sanded it, and then again I've used my scraper, and that's just where there was Vaseline Resist. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sand the next piece. So I'm just going to take sandpaper. I could use a palm sander as well, but I'm just going to sand. And as you can see, as I sand, the places where there was raised bits of my texture powder sand back to the undercolor, and the lower, the valleys, stay the top coat color. So that just gives us a nice, interesting textured look. Okay, so now I've gone and flipped all my boards over, and I'm just going to assemble them using a little bit of wood glue and some screws and some 1x2. So I'm just going to put wood glue on the back of these, and then just screw them, each board, into that piece of 1x2, and then I will be able to flip this over, put my final clear coat on, and it'll be all done and ready for my map. So For the final step here, I'm going to go ahead, I've got my board assembled, everything's the way I want it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply an oil modified polyurethane, which is one of my favorite products. Now the one thing you do need to know about oil modified poly is that it does yellow. So if you're using, if I was using this product over a white, I probably would choose polyacrylic versus polyurethane, just to stay away from that. What I like about it is it really does deepen and enrichen the colors, especially when you're using an oil-based or a water-based product, like water-based stains. You will notice this aniline dye is bleeding right up into my polyurethane and kind of spreading around. So the whole poly is going to end up tinted a little bit blue. That's okay because my whole piece is blue. This happened with the last piece, and I think that's what people really, really liked about it. If I was going to be doing colors other than blues, I would polyacrylic or polyurethane my aniline boards separately to prevent that from happening. But since it did seem to, I think it really was part of the effect of the last map that I did this way, I'm not worrying about it, and I'm actually kind of embracing it and spreading some of that blue throughout the rest of the other colored boards. Yeah, so I'm going to finish that up, and I've shown lots and lots of stenciling videos, so I don't think I'll necessarily demonstrate the stenciling portion of this piece. You can see that in another video. Alright, hope you enjoy. Let me know if you have any questions. Take care.